We're live for the post-race show. This is Stuck in the Catch Fence. We're now getting ready to talk about what we saw here on this wonderful Easter, a Christopher Bell win at Bristol Dirt. It was a really, really good race, an exciting race from the start to the very beginning. But at the end of the day, Christopher Bell, which to the surprise of very, very few, Joe, one of the dirt ringers, we've been waiting on it for a long time. I know you were hoping it was your number 5, but unfortunately for him, he got into quite a mess early of it. But Christopher Bell hangs on until that last caution flag and comes away with the victory today.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Ryan, I think we've talked many times on, the different NASCAR shows that we've done about the Bristol Dirt. And 2 years in a row, when Joey Logano won a couple of years ago, it looked like those cars had no business being on dirt. But the last 2 years at Bristol Dirt have really brought it back for me. I enjoyed that race thoroughly, even though my guy didn't come out on top. I think that what we saw just like last year looked like a dirt race. And I don't know what the plans in the future for Bristol Dirt are going to be, but I think that the drivers are over it from my understanding of what's being said around the garage and some of the interviews. But I thoroughly enjoyed that race tonight.
I agree with you 100%. And, to just kind of start, we will start with just the race, and then we'll go into, Christopher Bell winning and the other things that happened, the theatrics of the race. But I think, Joe, at that's the first thing you should start with. Was it a good product? And you're right. The first time we watched it, I was like, NASCAR doesn't know how to build a track. They didn't talk to Tony Stewart, yada, yada, yada. Now Tony Stewart's present during the race, and now we're watching it. And after somebody like myself, who just took his brother-in-law to his first dirt race experience yesterday, I literally felt the same way. I mean, it was chaotic, but it was fun. There were comers and goers. There was different strategy. There was different lines, and the track evolved. And as much as we like watching that from Richmond, sometimes the high line comes in later. Sometimes it's the midline. Sometimes whatever it may be on an asphalt track. Joe, for a fact, a dirt track is going to evolve. And we saw that last night at my local dirt track where, the high line was prevalent, but by the end of the main heats, Joe, everybody was running the low line.
Right.
And this track started low and then migrated to everybody up top. And I think you hit the nail on the head. This looked like dirt racing. And I think that's what we all wanted. I think one thing that if the drivers don't want to do this, they could look at the attendance, which I thought it was a very, very poorly attended event from what we could tell. Obviously, Bristol has a huge grandstand. So, I mean, if it's not close to being full, it'll look terrible. And it did look terrible tonight. And, you can factor in a bunch of different things. It's Sunday night. People got to work tomorrow more often than not. Got off on Friday, but probably don't get off today. Tomorrow. But if it's up to me, I like what we saw tonight, and I don't mind them keeping it. I also would say if they decide to go to a different track, I would not oppose that as well, because I think they figured out the right formula of now how to run these cars on dirt.
Yeah, and I'm going to start by addressing what I saw in the grandstands. I used to go to the Bristol at least one race, whether that be the spring race or the fall race or the race in August. Every year, I went to one of them, and I think that they need to do two things. One, there's no reason why this isn't ran on Saturday night like it was typically in the past. I don't understand why NASCAR now has or feels that they have to run every race on Sunday. And I kind of understand. I guess I kind of understand. To me, I think that the idea of having this at 7:00 was because I think the powers that be didn't want to compete with the Masters. That's my opinion. But at the end of the day, I think they shot themselves in the foot with attendance. But as you know, Ryan, nobody cares about attendance anymore because it's all about the money that you're getting from the TV deal. So where they're at, if they want butts in the seats, they're not going to be able to run a race on Sunday night. I mean, that looked like a rain delayed race. I've been to Bristol several years in a row, and typically it felt like every year I started going to the late summer race because it never rained late summer. It seemed like every year in the spring race, it got rained out. And you were waiting for the next day to watch the race. And the attendance in those stands looked like a rain out, rain delayed race that happened the next day. So I think that is an issue that they're going to have to address, because I think it's absolutely ridiculous to see a great racetrack like that and it looks like a truck race is going on during a cup race, because that's what it looked like to me. And there was absolutely nobody there yesterday during the truck race. So definitely, I haven't been to Bristol Dirt yet. I almost, kind of intended on going down this year, just fell. And that's another thing, it fell on Easter weekend. People have a lot of family commitments on Easter weekend that you can't just say, hey, see you later, family, I'm heading down to Bristol. Yeah. Sometimes your family and your marriage doesn't like that too much. So I think that was another cause. And they're going to have to figure something out, though, to get people in the seats, because that race is too good not to have people there.
Well, Joe, we typically start most of our post race show was was you entertained? Did you enjoy the race? Did you like it?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably going to be a resounding yes for most fans. I know there's quite a few people that I talk to that are just now getting into this sport, Joe, and that was a good product. And
I think so.
Yesterday, like I said, and I posted a short for the 3 people that YouTube allowed to see that were able to view it. But we talk about this. We talk about go and support your local dirt track, and this is why. This is what it looks like. This is where the top 5 all ran dirt as younger guys whenever they were growing up in the sport, and you never know who you're going to meet. Doing that, and also seeing what it takes to perfect their craft, and an off chance they might end up in the NASCAR series one day. So I thought it was a great product. Again, I'm with you. I'm just kind of disappointed that there wasn't enough fans, but I agree wholeheartedly with every single thing that you said, factoring into that. A Sunday night family holiday like is Easter. I mean, we all know that there's just certain holidays that bring family together, and Easter is one of them, especially going to church and doing all those things. And, hopefully you're having a wonderful Easter and remembering why we're celebrating it. But at the same time, it's hard to, I had family here, we didn't make a few videos because I had family here. And for that same reason, there's another, if I can't even come down here to make a few videos, for you guys to enjoy because my family's here. I mean, that's the type of commitment that it's hard, number one, but imagine then going 300 to 400 miles to try to do that same commitment. It makes it difficult, but it does suck. I hope something does change, whether they have it later in the year. Maybe they just go ahead and scrap an Easter Day race altogether. I wouldn't be unopposed to that, because if you look at the demographic of people that do go to NASCAR races, you're interfering with a major holiday. So,
well, and I could tell you this, ending up that my daughter played in an AAU basketball tournament this weekend on Friday and Saturday. Outside of that commitment, if that wasn't going on and the race was on Saturday night, I would have went and came home this morning. Because what are we, about 4.5 hours from Bristol, 5 hours roughly.
Right.
I could have pulled out with my camper at 5 o'clock in the morning, been home by 10, and nobody would have ever known. So Saturday, I think not having a Saturday night race kind of killed them. There's no reason why they couldn't have ran the trucks at noon or 1 and then went ahead with the cup race right after that. So
kind of like a real dirt race weekend.
Yeah, kind of like a real dirt race weekend. So, I think the logistics of what they put on, their product was great. Don't get me wrong, but logistically and timing, I think that they got it wrong this year on a holiday weekend. And speaking of Easter, Sissy Daniel says, "Hi, Uncle Ryan. I hope you're having a great Easter."
Hi, Sissy Daniels. I do not recognize that.
Danielle.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Sissy Danielle.
My comment screen's really little. I kind of got to squint to see it. I'm getting older, I am getting older.
Yeah, you do have a camera in front of you. We can see that.
And then Zoe's aesthetic says Ryan's bringing the heat with the hot Atlanta shirt. Step it up, Joe.
You see that? That's Murica is what that is. Joe, you want to know how much I spent for this?
$32.50.
$1.99 2
Oh,
years ago. I was looking for that same guy. I was like, you know what? I should have bought 3 or 4, but I could not find them.
right.
So I got a little bit of America going on.
No, I
But
like it.
no,
I like it.
I it's comfy. Where I record is about 4 degrees warmer than the North Pole. So thankfully it's not as bad as we're finally getting decent weather. I think the whole entire country got a little bit of decent weather today finally.
Uh, I miss part of that comment. Is
What's that?
Kira? Does Kira ring a bell?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
it's
Hi,
Kira.
Kier. Hi, Kier.
Oh.
Thanks for tuning in. If you have a NASCAR question, Kira, or a statement, feel free to ask or respond.
Yeah.
That being said, we've really held this off long enough. Let's go ahead and get to the finishing leaderboard here. Again, Christopher Bell ends up winning it. And to not many people's surprise, Tyler Reddick comes in second place, followed by Austin Dillon, Ricky Stenhouse, and Chase Briscoe. And Joe, if you look at, I would exclude Ricky Stenhouse. He was up in the top 10 a lot. 4 of the top 5 were really, to me, the drivers to beat more often than not through this race, especially because Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, they seem to fall back a little bit. I thought they both had some speed. Kyle Larson obviously made his own mistakes. Kyle Busch could only run the top line, and you saw him beating and banging, and finally his car said, I tap out. I don't want any more of this. But is there anything that, from these first, 5 that really surprised you outside of, really Ricky Stenhouse being that good as he was today?
Well, I tell you what, Austin Dillon doesn't surprise me by his race performance. It be coming into this weekend with Austin Dillon, I didn't think Austin Dillon had much of a chance this weekend, but after I watched qualifying yesterday, saw how strong he was on the dirt, and saw how strong his car was. I ended up taking him in one of my fantasy lineups this weekend. Ricky Stenhouse, that's a surprise getting in the top 5, obviously, but when you talk about Kyle Busch, you're absolutely right. He had, I would say the same car as Austin Dillon. I think his car might have been a little bit tighter or a little bit looser, actually, as they say with dirt tracks, because you're right. He did have to stay up in that cushion all day to keep his car from spinning out. And, one thing about the cushion, it can give you grip when you watch dirt racing, and you see a lot of guys go up there, but it really beats the heck out of your cars, especially when you're not talking about a dirt modified or a sprint car or a late model that's made for dirt. You're still talking about next gen cars here. And I know they
Not
set
made
up,
for dirt.
yeah, that are not made for dirt. I know that they changed the setup a little bit, but if you don't have a dirt track car and you're running up in the cushion, it's going to beat the heck out of your car. And that's what happened to Kyle Busch. That's what was going to happen to Christopher Bell. I'm not so sure that Tyler Reddick wasn't going to overtake him on that last turn, because Christopher Bell ended up having to. I mean, they ran out of cushion essentially. They were running.
Yeah.
They were running around the wall. And Christopher Bell, I tell you what, if that race went 3 more laps, Tyler Reddick would have won that race. And Tyler Reddick was waiting till the last 2 laps to make his move. Kind of ran out of real estate there with the caution. So, at the end of the day, this was really a good race. Bubba Wallace, he got into some trouble. He ended up finishing 12th. That's kind of crazy to me that he was able to finish that high. Really, it's something that we haven't seen that I thought was just incredible is we just saw a short track with 360 spins and not going to cautions. So, they were really, I thought they were kind of overzealous on the first couple of cautions. And I think word got back to NASCAR on that. And, after that, they were real liberal, or liberal's not the right word. They were real cautious about when they were going to throw a caution. If a car was able to spin around and get back going, they weren't throwing cautions. And I do appreciate NASCAR for doing that, because they let the race flow like it should have.
Yeah. Maybe lenient was your word you were looking for.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah. But no, you're right. At the beginning, whenever they were spinning out, nobody was making contact. I thought in my head, I was like, oh man. Well, I hope everybody tunes in Monday at 2 a.m. whenever we start this post race show. But you're right. I thought they did the right thing. I still thought they were inconsistent, because there were just some that they just threw out for no reason when nobody was getting hit. But I mean, you look at this, it was a great day for JGR, Christopher Bell, Martin Truex sneaks into the top 7, and Ty Gibbs with another top 10. I mean, just hanging around the top 10 the last 5 weeks. The rookies starting to put something together. Front Row Motorsports gets an 8 and 11. I think not a lot of people saw that coming. And then you mentioned it after having, again, another terrible start to a race. Bubba Wallace this time is able to fight through some adversity and find his way into 12th. Christopher Tyler Reddick, the other one for 2311, gets his way into second, as we talked about. But outside of that, this is going to score me big points. If you watch the weekly show, I had Justin Haley as my 5 times driver. So I have no idea how in the world he ended up getting there, but the two Indiana boys find their way right next to each other. Kind of looking down, Ryan Blaney involved in another wreck. Denny Hamlin was nothing to speak of the entire night. You mentioned JJ Yaley. That's
Yaley.
A 20th place position for them is really good. These guys hung out in the back the entire time, Joe, and I have no idea how they got 17th or 18th. They had zero speed. Brad Keselowski was doing donuts, it felt like, more often than he was driving straight. He had to at least cause 2 of the cautions.
He did.
By spinning out by himself. So for the 2 of the RFK cars to get in the top 20, that surprises me. Ryan Preece, I'll let you speak on him.
We're not going to speak his name. Don't even bring him up. Because I wasn't going to get into this, but don't even bring that guy up. I'll just say this. When you're Ryan Preece and you're out there to fill a position on a team in the field, don't try to race a guy like Kyle Larson, and don't intentionally wreck him. What was he thinking? If he's not suspended for the next race, I'm going to agree with Denny Hamlin about NASCAR just making up its own rules.
He will not be suspended for the next race.
So. Well, that's absolute crap.
BJ McLeod with 26. Nice. And then Dirt aficionado Jonathan Davenport did not run well. Neither did Matt Crafton. Kyle Busch, 32nd, ran in the top 10 most of the day. So that kind of rounds it up. I don't know what happened to Alex Bowman. I don't remember seeing anything at all about Alex Bowman.
No, Alex Bowman was running in the middle of the pack all day, and then he finished 2 laps down. Toward the end of the race there, I saw that he pulled on the pits. He was actually in that last lap.
I did see that. He kind of swiggling. Yeah.
So he got low and let everybody pass him. So, he ran into a problem. I will say Matt Crafton ran decent yesterday. And I don't know, that may have only been Matt Crafton's second time racing in the Cup Series, or his second or third.
So I want to say, Joe, he helped fill in for Kyle Busch some races whenever Kyle broke his leg. If I remember correctly, that's been a while. That's been like 8 years.
Obviously been in the Truck Series for forever, but doesn't have a lot of experience in a next gen car, and certainly I don't think he got quite a handle on it today because he was spinning out by himself quite a bit.
Right. You have anything on Command Center 1 there? Or we good?
Zoe's Aesthetic says Bowman was in 9th when I turned it on. And he was. And also, Zoe's Aesthetic says, oh, dang, $1.50. That's fire. Talking about your shirt.
Well, I said $1.99. But,
inflation. Deflation.
Things like $10 now. So, I want to talk about the winner a little bit. Christopher Bell. I obviously really, really like Christopher Bell. He's my second favorite driver if I had to choose one. I followed his career. I liked what he did in dirt coming up through. Pretty much was part of JGR when he got into the 95. I believe that was for Levine Family Racing, if I can name drop a racing organization that lasted like 2 years, and then finds his way at JGR. And I've made this contention, Joe, in our bold predictions that he was going to win the most races and win the championship this year. I might be early on that. I'm not going to take it back because I still think Christopher Bell's hella talented. And we, on the weekly show, talked about he had the most top 5s when it comes into this year overall for all the races that we have. He has the most top 5s this year. And I still land that, I think he's the championship caliber driver. Are we really starting to see a 2-headed race when it comes to young talent? William Byron, Christopher Bell. Do you think both of those guys after what we've seen for Christopher Bell when it comes to consistency and now getting a win and what we've seen from William Byron, do you think that these guys have turned the page to where we should now view them as elite drivers, or are you still kind of waiting and seeing?
So I'll say this, in case anybody doesn't know, I'll come out with it. I absolutely despise JGR, and Toyota. I'm just not a fan. I know you are. I would actually say Christopher Bell is probably a more talented driver than William Byron, because I think Chevrolets right now are dominating the field in every facet. I don't think Toyotas are actually, and that is encompasses all Toyotas. I think that they're a little bit behind the Chevrolets, and I think Chevrolets have an advantage on the field right now. I don't think that matters too much in a race like Bristol Dirt. Obviously, when you can bang your car off the wall, the manufacturers of the cars did not matter today. So we'll come out with that. But I think
Christopher started third. Should we remind, or not Cuddy Ware, JJ Yaley started third in this race, if we have to remind you that.
Right. So I think, and that's a whole nother topic, and that kind of goes along with the Ryan Preece thing. But if I was going to have to pick a more talented driver, I wouldn't look at the leaderboard. I wouldn't look at the points. I would say, based on what Christopher Bell's done, and I think Christopher Bell is JGR's most winning driver over the last year and a half or 2 years anyway.
Yeah.
So I think Christopher Bell's a great driver. William Byron's a great driver. I do think this. I think Christopher Bell, for a team like JGR or any team that he's on, is going to give a better look for that team or for NASCAR sponsors in general than a William Byron. And we've talked about this, just because I don't think William Byron's a likable guy. I think he's another Jimmy Johnson. I think he's going to be a great race car driver. He should have a long career. He should win a whole bunch of races, but I don't think he's ever going to have the fandom behind him that he should. And I think Christopher Bell's a driver. He's young. He's you watch him post race. He's excited. He talks well. He says the right things, and I think people will get behind him. And I think he has a whole drove of people behind him already. And a lot of those drivers do that transition from dirt anyway. So, I think that as far as, purely a gold mine for a team, I think Christopher Bell has the advantage there anyway.
So let's do this. And this is hypothetical, putting you on the spot. So tier one, let's rank our drivers right now from what we've seen. We'll do it fresh off of this. Maybe we can amend them on the weekly show, Joe, but let's just go ahead and do a power rankings right now. Okay. Right now, who in the sport would you put at number one?
Ooh, man. I think that's too hard to do, because if we're purely in the sole spot of number one, I still think, and people are going to hate this, I think Kyle Busch is the best driver in all of NASCAR right now. I do. I think Kyle Larson's up there, although I've backed off of him since we've seen him and the implementation of the next gen car last year. I think that he still has a lot to figure out about this car, and I don't think he's driving as good as he's not driving as good as the driver that I thought he was on a week in and week out basis. I would put William Byron in a top tier in NASCAR. I'd put Christopher Bell there. So there's,
well, if you want to do tiers versus drivers, let's do tiers. Let's just do let's do your first tier. I'll give my first tier. Let's do your first tier. What drivers would be in tier one? And I view this as championship capable winning driver.
Okay. You would have to put Kyle Busch, obviously, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott. I'd put Christopher Bell, William Byron, Joey Logano.
That's about six.
That would probably be my top tier of NASCAR.
Okay. Well, right now, because Chase Elliott's not driving, I'm going to remove him from it, just hypothetically. If he comes back,
well, I'm still viewing him as a current driver,
of course,
obviously,
of course, yeah, fair enough. Whenever he gets in a car, he just as capable of winning a race as anybody else. I don't think that should be questioned. But for the people that are listening that are Chase Elliott fans and want to start throwing things, just chill. So right now, I would put it William Byron. This is my tier, but this is kind of the order that I look at them in. I would put William Byron. Then I would put Kyle Larson because Kyle Larson has been in so many races this year and has had bad luck. And I thought again today he had a little bit of bad luck. But we're starting to see a little bit more vulnerability since the 10 wins, Joe. And I think that's kind of why you've had your iffiness about him because, Kyle Busch on the radio, if you don't have NASCAR Premium, I listen to Kyle Busch. Kyle Larson spun out right in front of him. He goes, don't see that every day. That was his response. Just Kyle Larson spinning himself out. You don't see that every day. And then Kyle Larson also was really hard on himself in the post race or after he came out of the infield care center and said, I shouldn't have been back there with Ryan Preece. He put himself back there by that spin out. So we all had Kyle Larson, and he was the betting favorite again today, really, really high. And I still think he's very much up there. He just makes a few more mistakes than what we typically are used to seeing him make in the last couple of years. So again, William Byron, Kyle Larson, and then I go Christopher Bell. And then after that, I think this might surprise people, but I'm starting to really look at Tyler Reddick as a consistent, really talented driver, capable of winning on multiple different types of tracks. I mean, you're talking road races, you're talking now dirt tracks. He's just a really, really, really good driver. And I think 2311 has caught up with JGR. And I think Tyler Reddick might be better than Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin at this point in his career because Denny Hamlin's not run very well at all. And if they're in close to the same equipment, I think Tyler Reddick is there. And then I would go Kyle Busch to finish off that tier. And I keep him there at 5 because I don't think RCR equipment is going to be consistent enough for him to be in the top 5 every race. And I think Richmond proved that to an exponential amount. That is RCR's car going to come off and be like Austin Dillon with a chance to win today or like Fontana? Or is it going to come off to where they need 200 laps to figure out what the hell's wrong with it? And obviously some of that is part of working with no practice and no qualifying. So that, hurts too. But I have the same thing with you, except I would add Tyler Reddick to that because I think he's a very, very capable driver and he's been looking really well. And there's a reason why 2311 went out 2 years before his contract ended and signed him.
There's always a aesthetic says Larson, Busch, Logano, tier 1. And I think that I don't know by the emoji if she is or I don't know if that is taking a look at mine and saying those are crap. I have no idea. I'm going to guess that by the emoji there, but it is Kyle Busch is still, and I'm not even a huge fan of Kyle Busch, but he's one of the best drivers in the sport, and I'm not going to shy away from Tyler Reddick. I'm not going to shy away from Tyler Reddick either. I think that Tyler Reddick is going to be. It probably should be in the top tier. I can't even argue. I'm trying to come up with, he's going to get there. I agree with you, Ryan. He's there. So
his biggest problem is he's driving a Toyota. And to your same thing, if he was back in, a higher quality Chevy, I think that he easily could win, more than what he's probably going to win this year. But I think what we've seen the transition from Chevy to Toyota, he's consistent. It's not been the manufacturer. And I think from the same point, what we've seen from Kyle Busch from Toyota to Chevy is that there's still going to be days that he's inconsistent. So he's not the same as what he was, but what he was a driver capable of winning 5 races in a row. So I don't think he's there anymore. That's coming with age. That's coming with, consistency. I think he hasn't handled the next gen car as much as I thought he'd be capable of. And, he himself makes stupid penalties. Him and Denny Hamlin think that pit road is a drag strip at times.
Right.
And, they shoot themselves in the foot. But I do want to go back to something and try not to get too heated, Joe. Yeah. So Ryan Preece, and let's start it from the beginning.
Excuse me.
He did not like something that Kyle Larson did. Now, due to Fox's great coverage, we did get to see Ryan Preece point his finger, go on one side of the car, go on the other side of the car. And he mentioned something about Kyle Larson doing whatever he wants on the radio and doesn't really care for about people. And I don't really get that feeling from Kyle Larson. I think he does drive people hard sometimes. Obviously, he's willing to wreck Chase Elliott almost twice last year, once for sure, and almost twice. But I also think Kyle Larson, he's a dirt driver. I think that's just how dirt drivers drive more often than not. They get the most out of their vehicle, and every inch you give, they take, but they don't wreck you doing something stupid. They wreck you or they drive you hard. If there's a difference there, then I may not be able to say that correctly or for people to understand. There's a Ross Chastain of racing, and that's just going and plowing you through. And then there's I'm going to take every inch that you have, so you have to back out of your car, like Bubba Wallace was not willing to do.
Right.
Type of racing. There's a difference. So again, I don't know what pissed Ryan Preece off, but he said he's going to retaliate. He said he's going to do something. He wasn't standing up for it anymore. His crew chief's like, F yeah, do that. Chad Johnson said, heck yeah, let's do that. And then in the 20th something position, Joe, I think Kyle Larson came off the top with Ryan Preece. They were racing each other very hard. Ryan Preece ends up bumping into Kyle Larson into the wall.
On purpose.
On purpose, yes. On purpose. You could tell that they were racing hard, but Ryan Preece didn't have to turn into him. And then I don't know if something broke. Kyle Larson said something broke. I don't know if something broke. I thought Kyle Larson tried to retaliate, and he may have tried to retaliate and something broke. I think both things can be true. He knew the toe link was gone, so he said, F it, I'm going to try to take him out. And then that was the nail in the coffin for Kyle Larson. But from a Kyle Larson fan perspective, what the hell did we just watch?
Well, number one, the Kyle Larson issue, you have to, why in the world, if you're not going to take tires, don't you just stay out and keep your position? That is the stupidest thing I have seen this year. As far as and we've seen already a lot of dumb things coming off pit road. That is by far the dumbest I've seen. And to be honest with you, I think it had everybody in the booth kind of flabbergasted too, because even Tony Stewart was like, what are they doing? So I think at the end of the day, if because the rule was in this race, in case you're not aware, I know you are, Ryan, but you could only change tires or fuel up during the end of a stage. So that's the only time you could do it. And at the end of stage 2, he comes down pit road and doesn't get new tires, which doesn't make any sense to me. I guess he liked the tires he was on. But anyway, it caused him to restart in the middle of the pack, which ended up causing him to spin out, which I think was because he didn't have new tires and he was running up in the cushion and had to run down low, and he didn't have the car to run down low. So he ends up spinning out, ends up back in the back of the pack with Ryan Preece, of all people. And I'll say this about Ryan Preece. I understand it's a NASCAR race, but let me tell you something, Ryan Preece, if you happen to come across this because you're searching something on YouTube and you see this video, which I doubt is going to happen, you are not the same caliber driver as Kyle Larson. And for you to make the comments that you made over your radio on a dirt track at the very least is absolutely ridiculous. You should know your place. You are a second or third driver on any team that fills the field to run in the back of the pack. And you may have a good race once a season, but today wasn't it. And you took out probably one of the top 3 dirt drivers in all of the United States because your feelings got hurt. And that's absolutely ridiculous to me. So, obviously I'm a dirt track fan. I've watched thousands and thousands of laps on dirt tracks, and I've never seen, in the entire time I've ever watched a dirt race, a car going into a turn and the nose of that car turns right into the wall. You never see that. Your back end spins out at dirt tracks. So when you see the front end of his car turn into Kyle Larson in a turn, that was intentional. And he should be suspended. They're not suspended. You're right. He shouldn't be suspended, but he should be docked points for whatever that's worth for Ryan Preece for what he did. It was obviously intentional. they took points away from Denny Hamlin. They need to take points away from Ryan Preece.
Yeah, I mean, he laid down the fact that he was not putting up with it anymore and that he was going to retaliate. And I will say this: we're going to go over. There was a lot that happened this week. Wanted to get into more of the news when it came to the Hendrick stuff, the appeals process, NASCAR changing its rules, college racing getting screwed. So we're gonna get into that into the weekly show. We might have a long weekly show, Joe, this week because we got a lot of stuff that we have to get into and just didn't have the opportunity to due to the holiday weekend. But I want to preface this: you're too nice. Kyle Larson is the best dirt track racer in America. I don't care. He just
I
won.
think there's an
He
argument
won the
for
night
Christopher
before.
Bell.
He won it. I'll just say this. He got into a late model.
I agree. But
yeah, he got into a late model and won the race in Tennessee. He gets into a World of Outlaw car and wins races. When he wasn't allowed to drive in NASCAR, not only did he win races, he dominated everywhere he went. I think he won like 10 races in a row in the World of Outlaws. And if you watch the World of Outlaws, it's pretty damn competitive. I mean, their type of tracks that they go on are very, very different
and very
from one day to the next. So, I think you didn't give him enough credit there. I know you're the Kyle Larson fan. You don't want to sound like the fanboy. I do the same thing with Kyle Busch. I'm willing to let somebody else put words in my mouth that I think are true that don't usually come out of mine. But I do think he is the best dirt track driver. And if he was doing it right now and not NASCAR, easily would be the best in the country.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
That being said, I go back to what happened earlier, and I just completely don't get it. I thought Kyle Larson was racing hard. I thought he was driving a typical race, and you're gonna squeeze people. I mean, for God's sakes, we saw Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch get into each other because there's just too much going on. If you listen to these cars, and I wish they would have done this more on Fox, which there's your bingo word. That probably got 3 people a bingo. I wish Fox would have done this better. When they turn the car, they start before they even get into the turn, and then you hear you have to feather it the entire time because you'll end up what ends up happening, like you were saying, Joe, at the top, you'll just spin it around. Okay. That's how easy, or that's how much of a play that they have to do with these vehicles. Otherwise, you go from doing really good or doing what Kyle Larson did and spinning himself out. And there's going to be mistakes made on a dirt track. And for Ryan Preece to take it to that point, he's had some bad luck. I think that he ended up taking his frustration out on that one incident. He probably went into this weekend, Joe, with a mindset, I'm not going to get screwed today, and was looking for any possibility by anybody to go, there it was, I got screwed. And just took it out on Kyle Larson. But no, that was a really stupid move. And I think a lot of people in NASCAR that would have gave Ryan Preece a chance because he's never raced in really good equipment, but has always been a good modified driver. I think he lost a lot of respect tonight.
No, I can't disagree with your assertion of that event. But at the end of the day, Kyle Larson should have never been where he was. And I think that turned into a strategy thing. I have no idea. I would like to hear a reasoning on that at some point, and I'm sure that question will be asked at some point of his team. So hopefully I can get the news on that. Zoe's Aesthetic says, well, first of all, they didn't like my picks. They just hate Logano apparently. And then also says, I think the way that he did it was ideal. It wasn't egregious. It was back and forth in that specific sequence. I agree with that, but also if you listen to what Ryan says, that happens on dirt. The retaliation of putting Kyle Larson into the wall, and then what looked like Kyle Larson retaliating to that, which ultimately spun him out and ended his race, should have never happened. Anytime, like I said, anytime you see a car on dirt, whether that be a modified, a sprint car, or a Hornet that's racing a filler race on any dirt track on Friday or Saturday night, anytime you see their nose turn into the wall in a turn, that's intentional. Then Zoe's Aesthetic says, it was certainly intentional. But you can't say that's not common on dirt, in my opinion. Though I agree with knowing your place to that extent. So sounds like they agree a little bit.
I would say this, you don't typically see drivers unless they just hit them in their quarter panel because they go low. And then, as you know, Joe, they'll hit them in their left corner. That's typically how they dump people in dirt. They don't just turn on a straightaway to hit somebody because then again, you're risking the fact that people are doing different lines and that driver has the opportunity to come across. That's a dangerous move by doing it that way. It's always, if you're going to dump somebody, you do it in the corner. And the reason why, you lose speed and the driver goes up the track. And 99% of the time, if he goes up the track, nobody gets hurt. When you do something stupid like that on a straightaway, you're risking the fact he's turning driver side in to a group of people. Now, it wasn't Bubba Wallace bad. It was, they were more side by side than they were, nose to quarter panel. But still, when you break a tie rod like he did, and Kyle Larson made it, I thought it was a stupid move to try to retaliate. But again, if I was pissed off, I'm not sure what I would do too. So, but in his ultimately, I think Kyle Larson's night was going to be done anyway.
I think
the question being, was the retaliation justified by Ryan Priest? I think that's the question.
No,
it wasn't,
I don't think
did
so.
he do a good enough job of it? It was, what the hell are you retaliating? I think that's the part that we're kind of lost on and not really understanding what really happened. I don't know if Ryan Priest blew a tire because of something of that nature, and that's why he went back there. Again, I'm not really sure. And lo and behold, if we have to let Fox let us know what it is, Joe, we'll never know. So, that's
my blood pressure.
I just was confused on that.
Yeah, and my blood pressure's way too high tonight after watching that race to even get into Fox coverage of that race. I mean, it's a dirt race. Why are we watching the battle for 32nd position? Why there's a battle for first going on? I mean, literally, they cut away when Austin Dillon, Kyle Busch, Reddick, and Larson were all up front racing each other. You had a 4-car race going on for the lead.
Yeah,
we were watching the middle of the pack. And it's like, what are we doing?
Eric Almirola's got a good strong showing tonight in 23rd.
So, and then of course, you hear, spins around and keeps going and never cut away to show it. You don't see anything. It's absolutely terrible coverage. Fox, I mean, and I know it's a premium thing you pay for, but I watch Flow Racing, I watch Dirt Vision. They do a really good job of covering dirt races. You're telling me that Fox Sports cannot do that quality of a job covering a dirt race at Bristol? It's terrible. Their race coverage is terrible. And I'll get
unfortunately, Joe, I think they've proven our point that they absolutely cannot do a good job of covering. That's the second smallest track. It literally goes, the camera goes anywhere from turn 1 to turn 3 to see where that wreck is. And this, like, no, we do have a drone. We have a drone in the air to let you know for the choose rule, but we cannot tell you what happened on turn.
Because let's change it up that much, because why put a guy out there with a cone that he pulls in with a rope and not throw it? You're throwing it back to the dirt heritage anyway. Why not do it the right way? No, you fly a drone with an X pattern on it for the choose cone. That you know what that was done. They were proud of that choose cone too. But
when somebody got that to pass, which, that guy was like, this will never happen. What if we just fly a drone that holds a sign? I like it. And he's like, wait, no shit.
No, that's probably exactly what happened. But, if you're going to show a dirt race, show the whole track. There's no reason why you can't show a half-mile track. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to be cutting down straightaways. You could show the whole race. And all you have to do is zoom in when you want to zoom in. Let people see the race. They do a terrible job of that.
Yeah, and I did want to get to this real quick. And as you know, we talked about this on the weekly show. We said, where could you go anywhere if we had the opportunity? And selfishly, we said, we're going to remove one track, or I told you to remove one track because it's our home track. And I didn't go there this weekend because I wanted my brother-in-law to see 5 different types of racing versus just one single
Yeah.
set of racing, which was the sprints. And our community and the racing community suffered a terrible loss this past weekend. And we mentioned our families get together on Easter, and I was kind of surprised that Fox showed it, but Lawrenceburg is our local dirt track, and we tell you guys to go support it. And unfortunately, Justin Owen, qualifying yesterday, lost his life. And I think, Joe, while we have our families together and why we're talking about Easter and the reason for that, I think that's a good time to reflect back about how dangerous this sport is. There's a reason why we say a prayer before we start, because we know at any given time, any driver has that possibility of at worst getting seriously, or at least getting seriously injured, and at worst being the last time in a car. But I just wanted to say, keep his family in your thoughts and prayers. And again, go out and do what you can to support these guys, because as much as it is entertaining for us, it's a lifestyle for some. There is some serious possibility of either injury or ungodly, something worse. And 24 years old, I believe, and it might have been 27 years old, I believe.
27.
Actually.
27.
Won the track championship last year at Lawrenceburg, and we'll remember Justin Owen for providing all those thrills and doing what he loved the most. But just wanted to pass that along, and we are thinking about his family, and realize just how dangerous the sport is. And unfortunately, Joe, it takes something like that for us to recognize that at times.
Yeah. And I never met the guy, seen him race several times. Obviously he's always up near the front at the end of the race for sure. He was a good sprint car driver. And I actually thought about going last night as well. We were actually coming back that way. I was up in Mason, Ohio for an AAU tournament. My wife mentioned it. You said you were going to Florence. We talked about that, and really ultimately 2 reasons why we didn't go to Lawrenceburg last night is I didn't think the kids were probably dressed appropriately after the sun went down, because we were indoors. Cool. And also I wanted to watch the truck race. So I got home from that, and I woke up to that news this morning, and man, that's just terrible. That's you think that's always a possibility, obviously, like you said. And for it to happen at our local track that we go to, people in actually our community, several people in our community that run modifieds and pure stocks there, and you really at that level of racing, a lot of those guys have a day job as well. And they I won't call it a hobby. It's definitely a passion. It's definitely can turn into a second income for them, but also it's also something that just kind of shocks you when something like that happens, and kind of hits close to home a little bit, kind of reiterates that understanding of how dangerous that this is. And these drivers get in these cars, sprint cars, modifieds on dirt, NASCAR, truck races, Xfinity races, and they do it because they have a passion for driving, but ultimately they do it to entertain us. And I think we have to remember that as well.
And I want to give credit to Fox and NASCAR for bringing that up, but I also want to give credit to the community and the fandom that is racing. A local driver, and let's not pretend Lawrenceburg, Indiana is the greatest, biggest place that you could ever find on a map, Joe, because it's not. But the fact that the racing community is that tight knit to where a local driver from Harrison, Ohio loses his life, and they make time to say, hey, think about this guy's family. That shows the passion of what people have for motorsports and what type of a community is. And yes, we all fight about, how terrible Bubba Wallace is, or how Kyle Busch has another terrible post-race interview where he does all these different things. But what brings us all together is a love for motorsports and a passion I say that so many times when it comes to people like, why do you like NASCAR? I'm like, they got the most passionate fans. And, from East Coast to West Coast, everybody pays tribute, when a driver ends up losing his life. And there's just not another sport or community, Joe, like
Right.
that out there that's going to do that, and unfortunately, there's probably not another community that has to go through that. Um, but again, it's good to see, and
Right.
it's more welcome, and at least gives us one more glimpse of hope for the rest of the world. Because there's a lot of times, Joe, society proves us to pull our hair out, and we question reality. But something good can come out of something terrible, and that is that there are still some amazing people in this community, in this country, and in this world that can bring us together at that family's lowest moment.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about that. I mean, think back a couple of years ago, Daytona 500, when Ryan Newman, got taken out of there after a horrific crash, and nobody knew his status for a little bit after the race. And Ryan Newman was one of the most disliked drivers in NASCAR, but I can't tell you that anybody was hoping for the worst there. I didn't like Ryan Newman either, but when you understand the severity of it, you're like, I hope he's okay. So at the end of the day, part of this sport is being able to pick your drivers that you love and root for the drivers that you love and root against the drivers that you hate. But at the end of the day, it's still a sport, and they're doing that for entertainment purposes, and it's nobody should lose their life doing it.
Right. And again, just wanted to bring it up. It's close to home for us, and we love going to our local dirt track, and the last thing we ever want to think about is something like that happening. But we also know that there literally is a possibility every time they put their helmet on. So our thoughts and prayers go out to his family, and and Lawrenceburg Speedway. I mean, they've had, just to go on a little quick tangent, they had somebody break in, do thousands of dollars worth of damage. The weather in Southeast Indiana has done nothing but rain. This was opening weekend, and then they have to, thankfully, can't say enough about the professionalism and the things that they do right at Lawrenceburg. Unfortunately, have to go through that too. First responders and things of that nature, Joe. That's probably not what they were thinking on opening night, that they were going to have to deal with that type of situation, and they're going to have to move on. And I know they're going to do everything they can to make that the safest track that they possibly can too. But those type of people are also need to be thought about as well. And just a bad spot. There's never going to be something that you say that makes it any better, but do want to recognize him, and moving
Well,
forward, we'll keep. Go ahead.
And no, I will say, I've seen thousands of laps at Lawrenceburg Speedway, and I've seen some pretty horrific wrecks there. And I think that Lawrenceburg Speedway is a relatively safe track. You got to understand, the at the end of the day, when you're pushing a a sprint car, a modified, a next gen car, an Xfinity car to its limits, and you combine speed there, there's always a risk, and there are only so many variables that you could take into account at any one time.
Right.
Right.
So, yep. We'll move on. And, is there anything else, Joe, from this race that you took away from? Do you think, I guess the last question I'll end off with you. Do you think they'll be back here next year? Because that is not certified yet. And do you think they should?
I think that they should take the same approach that Kyle Busch said about Indianapolis. If they can't run it on the regular pavement, they shouldn't be running it. I think when you look at Bristol, it's designed to be run at this point with these cars as a concrete or a paved track. And I think that what you do in typical dirt race, not everybody qualifies for the race. They had 37 cars out there today. Is that right? 36 or 37 today. And that's too many. That's too many for a dirt race to begin with. I'll say that if you're going to run qualifying heat races, like they did kind of at Eldora when the trucks were there on a real dirt track, and you put them at a 3/8 mile track or even a half mile track, there's enough room on that track for people to make positioning and pass. The problem was that we saw today, and it's going to be typical. It looks like a dirt race, but it didn't have all the same variables as a dirt race, because unless you were in the top 5 and you were in that top 5 pack, you weren't getting to the front, because there's just too many cars there. Now, when you talk about Kyle Larson last year at Bristol, when he got into his late model, because he was running a sprint race or qualifying for a sprint race and he missed the driver's meeting or whatever it was for his late model, they put him at the end of the field, and he came out and got all the way up into second position before he blew a tire. In typical dirt race, you can do that because you have room to move. When you have 37 cars on Bristol Dirt, you don't have any room to move. And the way that you have to drive on a dirt track, right? And don't get me wrong, if it's a concrete track, you're not going from 37th to the first either. But there's strategy that you could play during a typical race with the rules that NASCAR has to improve your positioning to get back up there. You're not doing that in a dirt race unless you decide not to pit at the end of one of the stage races. So I don't think that this race needs to be ran. If you can't run it like a regular dirt race, if you can't run those 10-car qualifying races and kick half the field out, you don't need to be running it, because you're just trying to merge two sports into one. And I don't think it's a great mixture at this point. It's fun to watch, but if you want to run a dirt race, go to a dirt track and run a real dirt race. Run qualifying heats, run qualifying races, and run it the right way, and put 20 cars in the field instead of 37.
If they went to Eldora, would you be satisfied if they took it away from Bristol and say, we're going to go to Eldora? Would you be satisfied for that being a points race?
I probably not. I'm just gonna say this. This isn't World of Outlaws. This isn't USAC. This is NASCAR. And NASCAR has evolved to the point where they're supposed to be pavement races. That's what we're supposed to watch. Do they take the wheel and modified series on dirt?
I don't watch the wheel and modified.
Yeah. Well, neither do I. It's kind of a regional thing, but no, those are modified asphalt cars. They run on concrete and asphalt. These cars are not made to run on dirt, any form or facet. The trucks do a fairly good job, and I thought it was great when NASCAR was like, we're going to put the trucks on dirt, give you that spectacle with the Mud Summer Classic every year. Okay, I'm going to tune in and watch that. That's great. But I think the problem was too many people were tuning in and watching, and somebody had the bright idea to said, let's put the cup cars on that dirt. And yeah, the last 2 years has been fun to watch. It's looked more like a dirt race. The Gen 7 cars were absolutely horrible, obviously, on the dirt. So at the end of the day, I don't know. I just don't think it needs to happen. And I'm a dirt fan.
This is the Gen 7. It was the Gen 6. Gen 6 was last gen.
Yeah. Gen 6.
I'll say this. I will differ with you. And I didn't think that would come to a point where when I first was introduced to this idea, I thought it was terrible, really stupid, didn't like it. The first race really solidified that, because I thought it was a terrible show. It didn't look like dirt racing. It just looked like really slow NASCARs on Bristol. And I think, like you said, Joe, probably because they had really terrible cars with the Gen 6. But I came to the point I've been really entertained the last 2 times. And the purist in me doesn't like that, because you're right. I wish that they would, but my argument would be they should stick to what NASCAR is. But the entertainment factor for me has watched the last 2 races and go, yeah, that was really fun. And, I don't want them to do it like Atlanta and, change all the half miles or change all the short tracks to dirt or whatever. I wish they would rotate. That's what I wish that they would do with it. I don't think it always has to be at Bristol. I think the fans have made their voice known. They don't want it to be at Bristol either, because they don't show up, or NASCAR has not done a good enough job to give them incentive to show up. Maybe that's just a race in Bristol in April anyway. But I've really, really enjoyed the last 2 races. And, if they decide to go on with it, I won't question it. or I shouldn't say question. I won't give backlash like I would have before. I think they've kind of hit a sweet spot with it. I wish it was longer. I wish they did all the things that you said to make it a true dirt race versus kind of half-assing it, because there needs to be more strategy with it, and they haven't done that. If you want to take tires, then have a damn pit stop and take tires. Like I don't get that. Like, why are we not having pit stops? Why are we stopping and then letting everybody, do these weird things that you don't typically do? You want to fix your car, you do that after the heat.
Right.
You do all those different type of things then. But
well, and to that, and that's what my point was, that you're trying to take dirt rules, you're trying to take cup rules and merge them together and trying to give a product. And my biggest argument, I understand if this is something like Zoe's Aesthetics just said, I only saw the second half and it was better than the first 4 races of the season. I'm not going to disagree that the entertainment value of this race is not great. Outside of the first year that they did it, when Logano got his win, the last 2 years have been spectacular to watch. I'm not saying that, but my only point is, and I'll say it again, if you're going to have a dirt race, have a dirt race. That's my point. So,
and that's a great point, Joe. And I think that's fair. If you're going to go away from stock car racing, then do it like dirt racing, because that's what people want to see. And there's a reason why. We know why. It's sponsors. That's the only reason why they won't do it. Is they won't do it due to sponsors. And maybe it needs to be an all-star race where they do dirt racing, because that'd be a hellacious all-star race if they did it on dirt. I don't think anybody would question that. If they just did it like, hey, you come in, this is the open, you don't make the open, tough shit. I would be totally fine with that. It doesn't have to be a points race for me. I just like the product. Yeah. And if the winner gets $1 million because they do a dirt race, then let's do it like a normal dirt race and let's have a great time with it. But, I don't have to be a points race. That being said, I will take it over what I think the horrificness of this street circuit will be on July 4th weekend. I don't see that changing. It will have to be, in my opinion, a divine intervention for me to enjoy the street circuit race that we're about to witness in Chicago. And if I have to have the choice between one of those two staying with the current setup that we have now, it's got to be dirt. Again, not ever seeing the street circuit, but also, Joe, we know how these cars drive. Nowhere close built to drive for a street circuit race, and maybe that's an argument for a different day. But, if there's
and we're going to have a street race, do that for real too, Fox. Don't cut the commercial for the entire race. So do that as well, but as F1 does. But yeah, I agree, that's going to be horrific, and I think that hopefully this is the only year that we have to witness this.
I would hope so. But you have anything else in closing? Does anybody else in the comments have anything that they would like to say before we jump off?
No, I'll get to one of Zoe's comments. Talking about Fox, they said their football coverage is even subpar most days, and if that's fairly stationary, never mind cars, and that's fairly stationary. Never mind cars going in an oval, and that's absolutely true. So,
yeah, thank God we're Bengals fans, so we get to watch CBS.
Yeah, I am. I'll say this in closing about the dirt race. Outside of everything we talked about, and obviously my feelings of racing on dirt, I still think the entertainment value of this race was great, and I agree with you. You make this an all-star race, take the points out of it, run a true dirt race. I think the entertainment value of that will be just the same, if not better. So great race today, really.
Right. Yeah. It was really fun, and I thought we had fun with the show as well. So again, want to thank everybody that tuned in and listened. We really do appreciate you joining us. We know that it's becoming harder to try to find our content, so we're trying to push it out the best way that we can. So if you want to have those easier for you to find us, you can like and subscribe. We always hope that you're able to do that if you feel willing to. You don't have to. And then, Joe and I, we typically have 3 to 4 videos every single week. We'll get back to the betting video. I wish I was able to do a betting video this week because, Joe, I put in a FanDuel lineup. I usually do 2 every week. And the second one that I did today ended up doing really well. I think it ended up finishing like 12th out of 1,500 people. I know for a fact you would have had Christopher Bell as one of your favorites to bet on, if not maybe your second overall favorite to bet on this week, and we could have won you money that way, but we'll get back to that. The Indy 500's coming up. Joe has told me without any type of veto power that we have to cover that.
Yes. And you're probably going.
So no, don't
Yeah,
even.
yeah.
No,
Yeah, you're
no,
going.
I'm not.
Yes,
No,
you
I'm
are.
not.
Yeah,
No,
you
I'm
are.
not. No, I'm not. I
I
am
know
not
where
going.
I know where you live.
I am not going. I will give myself mumps, and so I don't have to do that ever again. No, I'm not doing it. I will set up a track for ants in a most inhumane possible way where they have to go in a circle and then spray paint them different colors.
Yeah.
And that will be more enjoyable for me.
Well,
And then it'll be an elimination race. The loser has to get a magnifying glass over top of them to knock them out.
yeah.
That
Well,
might have been too far.
And you're catching another race next weekend?
Yes. Oh, dang it. I forgot about that. So I
I
guess the
still
show
might. I have to figure out what's going on at work this week, and I might be heading there as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the post race show will probably be what's the right way to put it? Delayed at the very most, because I am going to Martinsville, and I will give you a short on what I think truly about the Martinsville hot dog.
Yeah.
So I will give you on a scale of 5 wieners, my judgment from the Martinsville hot dogs.
Well, if
it's really, really good, you get 5 wieners.
Well, I'll tell you, I still may go. I haven't decided yet. Like I said, I got to catch up at work this week, see what we have going on. But I could almost tell you that I'm going to like the wieners because I like wieners because I'm fat.
I have a lot of things I want to say and nothing that I will say. I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot of things I want to say. And if we didn't have a camera, there's a lot of things I would have said.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you.
But I will say nothing else besides, Joe, you're not fat. You are just you got your winter coat. It's getting summer now.
I've had my winter coat on for 15 years.
Listen, man, I'm trying to help you out. Stop.
Oh, you don't have to church it up just because it's Easter. I'm going to tell you this: a local casino used to sell a 5-pound hot dog. I don't know if you remember that. A restaurant inside the casino here locally sold a 5-pound hot dog.
And sounds awful. I'm not going to lie.
Oh man, I never ordered it myself, but I have seen it ordered. I think it was $50, and apparently, if you ate the whole 5-pound hot dog, you got it for free. I don't think anybody was able to do that, to my knowledge, but that's about the only hot dog that I probably could tell you that I probably wouldn't like. Most of the time, I like a good hot dog.
Even if you win that, you lose. You just ate 5 pounds worth of hot dog.
Yeah, which, in case you are not aware, Ryan, I'm sure you are, what actually goes into a hot dog?
Yeah, like everything they find on the floor in a processing factory.
We can't use this. Throw it in that giant blender. We're gonna make a hot dog out of it.
Yeah, look up pink slurry on Google Images, and you may never have another hot dog. And I'll ask why they're red too while I'm there. So yeah, if you're able to go, Joe, let me know. We'll figure something out. And we'll have content for you this week. We'll break down everything that happened in terms of the rules and stuff like that as well. But overall, it was a good race. And if Joe, you have nothing else, we'll sign off.
Yeah. See you later.
Thank you for tuning in. This